Okay, shutter clickers, we're going to do a review. Last time we did an unpacking and assembly review. This time we're going to do a ride review. Now I'm not going to mount my camera on my helmet and give you a bumpy ride around the block. That's not what I'm going to do. This time we're going to review the ride quality, and you determine that by looking at each individual component. We'll talk about my bike and its basic components. And even if you're not interested in this bike, maybe it'll help you make some decisions on a bike that you might want to buy, or make some comparisons to bikes that you might want to look at. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the tire. It's a 20x4 CTS BFT. CTS is the brand. BFT means big fat tire. That's all that means. Can you imagine that? One thing about CTS tires, they have a polyfiber inner liner to help protect against punctures from things like thorns and this sort of thing. It's not a bad looking tire. If anything, I would like to see a little more tread on it. But for my purpose and everything, I think it'll be just fine. Brakes. You have a disc both front and back. They're 160 millimeter and they're mechanical. They're not hydraulic. The bike has fenders on both the front and rear. The fenders are steel. They're well constructed, and I don't think they'll be the kind that'll rip and tear off. It does have a front headlight that runs off of the main battery. Now the only problem I had with my bike was on the front fender and the front headlight. I had to install that myself, and I could never get it to tighten up until I put rubber washers in here. And once I put two rubber washers, one's on each side of the nut and bolt here, why I was able to get the fender good and tight. This bike does come with front shock. There is no rear shock. The rear is a hardtail, but there is a front shock, and they seem to work pretty well. When I'm riding it, I can really tell a difference in the bumps on the front end as I can on the rear end on my seat. The seat takes a real pounding compared to the front end. So shocks, if you're going to do any off-road riding at all, are really important. I see a lot of these folding fat tire bikes that have a hard front end as well as a hardtail rear end, and I can't imagine how hard that's going to be to ride. The frame is an aluminum frame, and I call it a modified double diamond. Now a typical frame runs a bar like this, and then has one coming up like that on a regular bicycle. And why they call it a diamond, I'm not sure, but it's actually two triangles. But this here, because it folds, has to fold right there. Why, you get the single diamond here, but you get this modification here. And I don't see this on a lot of foldable fat tire bikes, this extra support, and I think that's really, really important. Now the disengagement lever here is very heavy duty. It has a locking button there. We have to unlock it, but it unlocks. You got to really yank on it, and it goes around real easy, and I'll demonstrate that here in a little bit. But the frame is aluminum. The carrier on the back, though, is steel, very rigid. I think it could hold quite a bit of weight. I hope it'll hold my camera equipment. That's the whole point. I'll be carrying a 25-pound backpack on it. The drivetrain is a 7-speed Shimano. The derailleur is a Shimano Tourney, and it has this little protection bar going around it here. My wife dumped her bike, and she dumped it right on this, and it wrecked the derailleur. I had to buy a new derailleur. The little protection bar is not quite long enough, and it's just a little flimsy. It bends. So I don't know. You know, a lot of bikes don't even have this at all. But she bent it down and she ruined the derailleur, bent it out of shape, and I couldn't form it back to make it work right. It never would shift all the way through. The pedals are folding pedals, which naturally you'd want on a folding bike. They seem to work pretty good. They don't have spikes. You do have a chain guard, which I wouldn't buy a bike if it didn't have a chain guard. One of the things I didn't care about on the frame was the fact that I wish they'd have put some screw holes here to mount a water jug. They didn't do that. That's unfortunate they didn't. The seat is fully adjustable. It came with a little rear light. This is battery operated. It does not run off the main battery. And of course, I said the fender. It's got a very long rear fender, which I really like. A lot of rear fenders will stop right about here. This one goes all the way back. Should give full protection against going through mud and water puddles. The first thing I like to do is drop the handlebars when I'm going to fold the bike up. Just pull the little locking pin, disengage, and they come right around like so. Then the next thing you want to do, locking pin, disengage, and the bike folds right up, just like that. And it sets down on the thing. And you can actually pick the bike up and push it on the tires. You want to bring it back around, kind of lift up on it. Just bring it on around, it'll lock, put it down, bring your handlebars up, lock her down, ready to go again. That's all there is to it. Works pretty smooth. I've only done it a couple of times and it wasn't much of a struggle. You get really used to it, I'm sure it'll fold right up with no problem at all. This is my wife's step-through bike, as you can see. It's step-through. And I don't remember the specs on it, but I don't imagine it would support near as much weight as the other bike because of the configuration of the frame here. Has the same system of folding. Now, I did put stability wheels. Some people call them training wheels, but I put stability wheels. Now, I had to make these myself. You can't buy anything that's generic that really fits, and they're really expensive. They want like $180 for stability wheels for this, and I contacted the manufacturer to get measurements to see whether I could make them fit, because it says in their information that it won't fit on all bikes. Well, I needed measurements, and they ignored my request, so I made the wheels myself. Are they effective? Well, they keep the bike from falling over, but it makes the bike really difficult to operate in turning. The wheels, they don't want to turn. And when you turn the bike, you can't lean the bike into the curve. You have to turn it into, and that takes a lot of getting used to. Our idea here is to, once she gets used to riding it and gets her confidence back, why, we'll take these off. And of course, it won't fold like this, but once you get hurt, you get a little nervous about riding, and I understand that. So, and that again goes back to the torque of the engine, or not engine, motor. Gas engines, electric motors. That's the torque of the motor. It takes some getting used to. And if you're in the middle of a turn and you stop like this and you crank that motor on and it's got full torque, you're going to dump. I'm just telling you, you're going to dump. So, but those will eventually come off, I'm sure. Okay, this is the cockpit. Of course, you got rear, front brakes. There's 2 wires on each brake, one for the brake itself and one to disengage the motor. So when you pull on the brakes, the motor disengages. This little button thing here that turns the motor on and off. The up and down arrows is to make adjustments. The typical SW900 controller. This is your Shimano derail controller, and this is your throttle. This has a throttle lockout. You can't go faster than, I think it's 12 miles an hour, something like that, 12, 15 miles an hour, which makes it a Class 2 bike. Front handlebars are fully adjustable, and it's indexed here so you know where adjustments are. This little light, I added this myself. It's a flashing light. I put another flashing light on the back here. Okay, it's the saddle. The saddle is really comfortable. It's firm enough to give support, but yet it's soft enough that it absorbs some of the bumps. I was really happy with the saddle. I thought sure I'd have to replace the saddle. It's the first thing I would do, but didn't have to. This is the battery. You can charge the battery in the bike. You pull this little tab out, stick your charger in there, and it'll charge right on the bike. The battery has a indicator here that tells how full the battery is. My battery has 3 bars. You do have to take the seat off to take the battery out. The controller is down here on the bottom under here. And in front of the controller, there's a little wire stand here that not only adds protection, but when you take the front tire off, it'll stand on that stand. Kickstand seems to be adequate. The battery is a 48 volt, 1200 amp hour battery. The motor is a 500 watt Xingli, a Chinese motor. I don't know how good that's going to be. I hope it's going to be real good. It's not a brand that's real popular, I don't think. I can't find out much about it on the internet. Well, that's about it, guys, on the bike. You know, before you buy one, you know, do your research. Really check things out and enjoy your ride. They're a lot of fun. I noticed one thing on this bike. You need to learn to set the parameters on your controller. It's real easy to do. There's all kinds of information. You can get a manual for the SW900 if that's what you have on the internet. And you need to set the parameters. I noticed the factory setting default setting on the parameters was, boy, when you hit those pedals, man, the thing goes like that. If you haven't ridden an electric bike before, getting used to the torque of the motor is the difficult part. So I set the parameter so that it has a slow start instead of a fast start, because it just almost throws you out of control. A lot of torque on an electric motor. They're not like a gasoline motor where the torque curve slowly comes up and you feel that surge after you get going, after the RPM comes up. On a torque motor, on an electric motor, the torque is instantaneous. So learn how to adjust the parameters and set it till you get used to the bike. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful for you. And if it was, why, share it with some of your friends. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed it, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and share the video with other people that you know. And I'm going to get out and get my camera bag on here and take some pictures. And you get out there and you keep your shutter clicking as well. Bye now.
the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam.